is Maya Collins, and I've spent my entire life counting breaths, not my own, but those of the people I love. 1,000 breaths. That's approximately how many times a person breathes in an hour. 60,000 in a day. 21,900,000 breaths in a year. I know this because when I was 8 years old, my mother told me to count my little brother's breaths while she called the ambulance. Just keep counting, Maya, she had said, her voice cracking with fear. Don't stop until help arrives. I counted 342 breaths before the paramedics burst through our front door. 342 shallow, wheezing gasps as my brother's tiny body fought against the asthma attack that had woken us all in the middle of the night. He survived, but something changed in me that night. I became obsessed with counting, with measuring the fragile thread of life in rhythmic inhalations and exhalations, as if by keeping track, I could somehow keep death at bay. 20 years later, I'm still counting. Only now, I count the breaths of strangers. As a respiratory therapist in Boston's largest hospital, I monitor the breathing of patients fighting everything from pneumonia to COVID-19. I adjust ventilators, administer breathing treatments, and sometimes, when medicine and machines aren't enough, I hold hands and count final breaths. It's a strange way to move through the world, always aware of this most fundamental rhythm of life, always listening for the next inhale, the next exhale, like a musician attuned to the beat of an eternal song. But there was one person whose breaths I refused to count, one person whose mortality I couldn't bear to acknowledge. Liam Walker. I met him 3 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday in April. He was a new doctor in the pulmonary department, all confident stride and easy smile, the kind of man who seemed to fill a room with his presence, who made nurses blush and patients trust him implicitly. I disliked him immediately, or at least, that's what I told myself. You must be Maya, he said, extending his hand. I've heard you're the best respiratory therapist in the hospital. I shook his hand briefly, noting the warmth of his palm against mine. And you must be Dr. Walker, I replied, keeping my voice professionally neutral. I've heard you're from California. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Is that all you've heard? That I'm from California? I was hoping for something more interesting, like I heard you wrestled alligators in Florida, or I heard you once performed an emergency tracheotomy with a ballpoint pen. Despite myself, I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. Sorry to disappoint you, Dr. Walker. The hospital grapevine isn't quite that creative. Call me Liam, he said, his eyes a startling shade of green crinkling at the corners. Dr. Walker makes me sound like my father. I nodded, already stepping away. I should get back to my patients, Dr. Walker. I felt his gaze on my back as I walked away, and something fluttered in my chest, a sensation I promptly ignored. I didn't have room in my life for distractions, especially not in the form of charming doctors with California tans and easy smiles. My life was ordered, predictable. I worked long shifts at the hospital, came home to my small but tidy apartment, and spent my free time with my brother, Ethan, who still battled asthma, but had learned to manage it well enough to live a relatively normal life. I didn't take risks. I kept my world small and controllable, because I had learned early that chaos and uncertainty led to counting breaths in the middle of the night, praying the numbers would continue to rise. But Liam Walker had a way of inserting himself into my carefully constructed routine. He consulted me on difficult cases, asked for my opinion during rounds, and somehow always seemed to be in the cafeteria when I took my lunch break. Mind if I join you? He asked one day, setting his tray down across from mine before I could answer. I looked up from my salad, raising an eyebrow. Do I have a choice? He grinned, unperturbed by my coolness. Of course. You always have a choice, Maya, but I'm hoping you'll choose to let me sit here, because I've been wanting to ask you something. I sighed, setting down my fork. What is it, Dr. Walker? Liam, he corrected automatically. And I was wondering if you'd consider having dinner with me sometime, outside the hospital, in nice clothes that aren't scrubs, with actual wine instead of cafeteria coffee. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Was he asking me on a date? This gorgeous, confident doctor who could probably have his pick of women? I don't date coworkers, I said finally, the words coming out more hoarsely than I intended. Liam's smile dimmed slightly, but he nodded. Fair enough. Can I ask why? I hesitated, unsure how to explain without revealing too much of myself. It complicates things, I said simply, and my life is complicated enough. He studied me for a moment, his green eyes surprisingly serious. Okay, he said finally. I respect that. Friends, then. We're colleagues. Dr. Walker, I corrected, gathering my things. That's enough. But as I walked away, I realized I was counting not breaths this time, but the steps it took to reach the cafeteria door. 17 steps to escape the unsettling effect Liam Walker had on my carefully controlled emotions. Over the next few months, Liam respected my boundaries mostly. He stopped asking me to dinner, but he continued to seek me out for consultations, to ask my opinion, to treat me as if my expertise was invaluable. And despite my determination to keep him at a professional distance, I found myself looking forward to our interactions. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday again, nearly a year after Liam had first arrived at the hospital. I was working a night shift, the emergency department unusually quiet for a weeknight. I had just finished checking on a patient when my phone buzzed with a text from my brother. Can't breathe. Coming in. My heart stuttered, then raced. Ethan hadn't had a serious asthma attack in years. For him to text me like this, it had to be bad. I ran to the ER entrance, arriving just as the ambulance pulled up. The paramedics rushed out, wheeling a stretcher carrying my brother's tall frame. His face was alarmingly pale, his lips tinged blue, and I could hear the terrible wheezing of his breath even from several feet away. Ethan, I called, rushing forward. I'm here. You're going to be okay. His eyes found mine, wide with panic. He tried to speak but couldn't get enough air. I grabbed his hand as we rushed inside, automatically counting his breaths. Too fast, too shallow, not enough oxygen. Everything blurred after that. The ER team took over, administering medications, setting up monitors. I stood to the side, no longer a respiratory therapist but a terrified sister, watching as my brother fought for each breath. Maya, a firm hand on my shoulder. Liam's voice, steady and calm. Let me help him. I hadn't even realized he was on duty. I nodded mutely, stepping back as Liam took charge of Ethan's care. His movements were confident, his orders clear. I watched as he intubated my brother when the medications didn't work, as he adjusted ventilator settings with precision, as he spoke to Ethan in a calm, reassuring voice even though my brother was now sedated. Hours passed in a haze of fear and hospital coffee. I sat by Ethan's bed in the ICU, counting the mechanical breaths delivered by the ventilator. So different from the breaths I'd counted as a child. These were perfectly timed, precisely measured, the work of machines rather than a struggling human body. Liam checked in regularly, reviewing Ethan's status, making adjustments to his treatment plan. He was professional, focused, but I didn't miss the gentle way he spoke to me, the concern in his eyes that went beyond doctor-patient relations. Near dawn, when Ethan's condition had finally stabilized, Liam found me in the hospital chapel. I wasn't praying, not exactly, just sitting in the silence, trying to calm the storm of fear that still raged inside me. He sat beside me, not speaking at first, just offering his presence. The chapel was empty except for us, the early morning light filtering through stained glass windows and casting colorful patterns on the floor. "He's going to be okay," Liam said finally. "His latest blood gases look good. We should be able to extubate him later today." I nodded, relief washing through me. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice hoarse from hours of worry, "for taking care of him, for being there." Liam turned to face me, his expression serious. "You don't have to thank me, Maya. It's my job." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You went above and beyond. You stayed past your shift. You treated him like he mattered." "He does matter," Liam said simply. "He's your brother, and you matter to me." The words hung in the air between us, a confession I wasn't prepared for. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "Maya," he said softly, reaching for my hand, "I know you don't date coworkers. I know you like to keep your life compartmentalized, but sometimes life doesn't fit into neat little boxes. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and beautiful all at once." I looked down at our joined hands, at the way his fingers wrapped around mine. Strong, steady hands that had just helped save my brother's life. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words barely audible. "Of what?" he asked gently. "Of caring too much, of counting your breaths someday." He looked confused, so I explained, about that night when I was 8, about counting Ethan's breaths, about how I'd spent my life since then trying to control the uncontrollable, how I'd become a respiratory therapist to help others breathe, but also to understand the mechanism that had nearly taken my brother from me, how I kept people at a distance because loving meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant the possibility of loss. Liam listened without interrupting, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Maya," he said finally, his voice gentle but firm, "we're all just a collection of breaths, a finite number from birth to death. We don't know how many we get, could be millions, could be thousands, but hiding from connections, from love, doesn't give you more breaths. It just means you spend the ones you have alone." His words struck me with the force of truth. I had been so focused on counting, on measuring, on controlling, that I had forgotten to actually live. "I don't know if I can change," I whispered. "It's been my way of coping for so long." Liam smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling in that way that made my heart flutter. "I'm not asking you to change, Maya, just to expand, to make room for possibilities, to take a breath." He inhaled deeply, demonstrating, "and then take another, and maybe, somewhere in between, let me in." I found myself smiling back, a tentative lifting of the corners of my mouth. I think I'd like to try." And so it began, slowly, cautiously, coffee after shifts, dinner at a small Italian restaurant where Liam knew the owner, walks along the Charles River on rare days when we both had time off. I learned that Liam had grown up in a small town in Northern California, the son of a high school science teacher and a nurse, that he decided to become a doctor after his grandmother died of pulmonary fibrosis, her lungs gradually turning to scar tissue until she couldn't breathe on her own, that he played guitar and sang with a voice that made me close my eyes just to listen, that he could make me laugh even after the hardest shifts, when death had claimed patience despite our best efforts. And gradually, I stopped counting steps and breaths and minutes, or rather, I still counted, but differently now. I counted the number of times Liam made me smile in a day, the number of kisses we shared before parting ways, the number of times my heart seemed to expand in my chest when he looked at me with those green eyes full of affection. 6 months after Ethan's hospitalization, Liam asked me to move in with him. His apartment was larger than mine, with windows that faced east and filled the rooms with morning light. I hesitated only briefly before saying yes. "Are you sure?" he asked, searching my face. "I don't want to rush you." I smiled, twining my arms around his neck. "I'm sure," I said. "I want to count our breaths together." The day I moved in was sunny and warm, a perfect June Saturday. Ethan helped us carry boxes, teasing us mercilessly about how disgustingly happy we looked. He had fully recovered from his asthma attack, though the experience had left him more diligent about his medication and monitoring. That night, after Ethan had gone and the boxes were stacked in corners waiting to be unpacked, Liam and I sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk descended. "Happy?" Liam back, his hand finding mine. I nodded, a sense of peace settling over me. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." And I was, happier than I had allowed myself to be in years, happier than I had thought possible for someone who had spent most of her life waiting for the next emergency, the next crisis, the next reason to start counting in fear. But life has a way of testing happiness, of challenging the peace we so carefully construct. 3 weeks after I moved in with Liam, he came home from a shift looking pale and drawn. I was in the kitchen making dinner, music playing softly in the background. I turned when I heard the door, a smile ready on my lips, but it faded when I saw his expression. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting down the spoon I'd been using to stir pasta sauce. Liam ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as a sign of stress. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice tight. "And I need you to just listen, okay? All the way through." Fear clutched at my chest, but I nodded, leading him to the couch. We sat facing each other, his hands clasped tightly in mine. "I had some tests done last week," he began, his eyes meeting mine steadily despite the tremor in his voice. "I've been having this cough that wouldn't go away, and some chest pain. I thought it was just stress, maybe the beginning of pneumonia, but the CT scan showed something else." My world narrowed to the sound of his voice, to the feel of his hands in mine. I wanted to interrupt, to tell him to stop, that I didn't want to hear what came next. But I had promised to listen. "I have a mass in my right lung," he continued, the words falling like stones between us. "They did a biopsy yesterday. It's cancer, Maya. Stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer." The room seemed to tilt, the floor dropping away beneath me. Cancer, lung cancer, the disease that stole breath, that turned lungs, the organs I had devoted my career to understanding into battlegrounds. "But you've never smoked," I said stupidly, as if that mattered, as if that could change the diagnosis. Liam's smile was sad. "About 15% of lung cancer patients have never smoked," he said, the doctor in him providing facts where comfort was impossible. "Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's environmental, sometimes it's just bad luck." What's the treatment plan?" I asked, falling back on professional language, trying to process this as a medical problem rather than a personal catastrophe. "Surgery to remove as much of the tumor as possible," he said, "then chemo and radiation. The oncologist thinks we caught it relatively early for stage 3. The prognosis is, I cautiously optimistic. Medical speak for we hope for the best but prepare for the worst." I knew the statistics for stage 3 lung cancer. I knew the 5-year survival rates. I knew what Liam would face in the coming months. The surgery, the recovery, the brutal side effects of chemotherapy and radiation. And suddenly, I was 8 years old again, counting my brother's breaths in the dark. Only now it was Liam's breaths I was counting, each one precious, each one a reminder of what I stood to lose. "Hi, Maya," Liam said softly, squeezing my hands. "Talk to me, please." I looked into his eyes, those beautiful green eyes that had first caught my attention a year ago, and saw fear there, but also determination and love, so much love it made my chest ache. "I'm here," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm with you. Whatever happens, whatever you need, I'm not going anywhere." High relief washed over his face, and I realized he had been afraid I would run, afraid this would be too much for me, afraid I would retreat behind the walls I had so carefully constructed before he came into my life. "I was going to wait to give you this," he said, reaching into his pocket. "I had plans, a nice dinner, maybe a walk along the river at sunset, but now I don't want to wait." He pulled out a small velvet box, and my breath caught in my throat. "Maya Collins," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "I know this is crazy timing. I know we're facing a battle that neither of us expected, but if this diagnosis has taught me anything, it's that life is too short to waste a single breath, and I want to spend every breath I have left with you. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of a different kind of love, so intense it hurt, of certainty amid chaos, of the strange, beautiful clarity that comes when life is distilled to its essence. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." The ring slid onto my finger, a perfect fit. Liam pulled me into his arms, and I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the rhythmic sound of his breathing. In, out, in, out. We didn't know how many breaths we would have together, 1,000, 1,000,000, a lifetime's worth. But I knew with absolute certainty that I wanted to count every single one. The next few months were a blur of hospitals and treatments. Liam's surgery was successful, the doctors removing most of the tumor along with a portion of his right lung. He recovered with the determination I had come to expect from him, pushing himself in physical therapy, following the treatment protocols to the letter. I took a leave of absence from work to care for him, to be there through the worst of the chemotherapy side effects. I held his hand through nausea and fatigue, through the days when he couldn't get out of bed, through the nights when pain kept him awake. And through it all, we planned our wedding. Not a big affair, neither of us wanted that. Just a small ceremony by the ocean, with Lena's best man and my closest friend as maid of honor. Something simple and meaningful, a celebration of love in the midst of struggle. "Are you sure you want to do this now?" I asked Liam one evening, as we sat on the couch reviewing potential venues. He was thin from the treatments, his once thick hair now sparse, but his eyes were as bright and determined as ever. "We could wait until you're feeling better." He shook his head, taking my hand. "I don't want to wait," he said simply. "I want to be your husband, Maya, in sickness and in health, but preferably with more of the health part coming soon." His laugh was weaker than before, but still genuine, still pure Liam. I smiled, leaning in to kiss him gently. "Then let's do it," I said. "Let's get married." We chose a date in October, when the leaves would be turning and the air would be crisp. Liam would be finished with his treatments by then, the doctors hopeful that the aggressive approach had eliminated the cancer. We found a small inn on the Massachusetts coast, with a view of the ocean and a garden where we could exchange vows. As the date approached, Liam grew stronger. His hair began to grow back, his appetite returned, and though he tired easily, he was able to return to work part-time. The follow-up scans showed no evidence of disease, not a cure. The oncologist warned us, but a very good sign. The morning of our wedding dawned clear and cool, the sky a brilliant blue. I stood at the window of my room at the inn, watching the waves crash against the shore, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since before Liam's diagnosis. My friend Amy helped me into my dress, a simple, flowing gown of ivory silk that moved like water when I walked. I wore my mother's pearl earrings and a bracelet that had belonged to Liam's grandmother. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. "You look beautiful," Amy said, adjusting the small flowers in my hair. "Liam is going to lose his mind when he sees you." I smiled, a flutter of anticipation in my stomach. "I can't believe this is happening," I said softly. "After everything, we're actually here." Amy squeezed my hand. "You deserve this happiness, Maya. Both of you do." Ethan knocked on the door a few minutes later, handsome in his suit, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Wow, sis," he said, his voice unusually emotional. "You look incredible." "Ah, thanks," I said, blinking back tears. "Is everything ready?" He nodded, offering his arm. "Liam's waiting for you. And I gotta say, I've never seen a man look so nervous and so happy at the same time." With Ethan on one side and Amy on the other, I made my way through the inn and out to the garden. The small gathering of friends and family stood as we appeared, but I had eyes only for Liam. He stood beneath an arch of autumn flowers, the ocean a shimmering backdrop behind him. He had regained some of the weight he'd lost during treatment, and though his hair was shorter than before, it suited him. But it was his expression that caught my breath, a look of such pure joy, such absolute love, that it made my heart swell in my chest. As I walked toward him, I wasn't counting steps or breaths. I was simply present, fully and completely, in this perfect moment. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. We had written our own vows, words that acknowledged both the beauty and fragility of life, the promise to cherish each day, each breath we were given together. "Maya," Liam said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Before I met you, I understood breathing as a doctor, the mechanics, the physiology, but you taught me to understand it as something more, a measure of life, a count of precious moments. I promise to make each breath count, to fill our life with joy and purpose, to love you through whatever challenges we face, and to remind you, whenever you start counting in fear, that some things are worth the risk and you, Maya Collins, are worth everything." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I spoke my vows in return. "Liam, you came into my life when I was afraid to truly live it. You showed me that counting breaths doesn't have to be about fear. It can be about gratitude, about recognizing the gift of each moment we're given. I promise to stand by you through whatever comes next, to count our blessings instead of our worries, to love you with every breath I take, and to remember, always, that even 1,000 breaths between us couldn't diminish what we've found together." When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Liam's kiss was gentle but filled with promise. The small crowd applauded, and I felt a sense of rightness, of completion, that I had never experienced before. The reception was as simple as the ceremony, dinner at the inn's restaurant, with good food and wine, laughter and conversation. Ethan gave a toast that made everyone both laugh and cry, speaking of my childhood habit of counting and how fitting it was that I had found someone worth counting a lifetime with. As the evening wound down, Liam and I slipped away to walk along the beach. The moon was rising over the water, casting a silver path across the waves. We walked hand in hand, our shoes dangling from our free hands, sand cool beneath our feet. "Happy?" Liam asked, echoing the question he had asked the night I moved in with him. I stopped, turning to face him. The moonlight silvered his features, making him look almost otherworldly. My husband. The word was new and wonderful. More than I ever thought possible, I replied, reaching up to touch his face. Are you? His smile was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. I'm married to the love of my life. I'm in remission. I'm standing on a beach under a full moon. Yes, Maya Walker. I am extraordinarily happy. Extraordinarily happy. And the use of my new last name sent a thrill through me. Maya Walker. It sounded right, like a name I had been waiting to wear. We continued our walk, talking about everything and nothing. Our plans for a delayed honeymoon when Liam was stronger. The small house we were thinking of buying. The possibility of starting a family someday. Normal conversations, ordinary dreams, made extraordinary by the fact that we had fought so hard to have them. Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Liam returned to work full-time, though he was careful not to overextend himself. I went back to my position as a respiratory therapist, finding renewed purpose in my work. We bought the house we had talked about, a small Cape Cod with a garden and a front porch where we could sit in the evenings. Every 3 months, Liam had scans to check for any recurrence of the cancer. Each clean result was a victory, a reason to celebrate, but the anxiety never fully disappeared. The days leading up to each appointment filled with a tension neither of us could quite shake. I hate what this does to you, Liam said. One night, after a particularly stressful week waiting for results, the way you start counting again, the way you watch me when you think I'm not looking. I sighed, curling closer to him on the couch. I'm sorry, I said. I try not to, but it's like my brain goes back to that old pattern when I'm scared. Liam stroked my hair, his touch soothing. I know, he said gently, and I understand, but I don't want cancer to be the third person in our marriage. Maya, I don't want fear to steal our joy. He was right. Of course, we had fought too hard, come too far, to let fear dictate our lives, but it was easier said than done. What if we make a pact? I suggested, sitting up to look at him. What if, instead of dreading the scan days, we planned something special for after each one, something to look forward to, regardless of the results? Liam's face brightened. I like that, he said. We could take a day trip, try a new restaurant, maybe eventually plan bigger things like weekend getaways. And so our tradition was born. After each scan, we did something that celebrated life. We hiked in the White Mountains, ate at restaurants we'd been wanting to try, took cooking classes and dance lessons. We made memories, deliberately and joyfully, refusing to let uncertainty eclipse our happiness. 2 years after our wedding, Liam reached an important milestone. He was officially considered in long-term remission. The risk of recurrence was still there, but it decreased with each passing year. We celebrated with a long-delayed honeymoon to Hawaii, where we swam in the ocean, hiked to waterfalls, and watched the sunrise from the top of a volcano. It was during this trip that we decided to start trying for a baby. We had discussed it before, weighing the risks and unknowns, but now it felt right. A leap of faith, a declaration of hope for the future. Are you sure? I asked Liam as we lay on the beach watching the stars emerge. With everything we've been through, everything that might still happen, he turned to face me, sand clinging to his shoulder. I'm sure, he said firmly. I want a family with you, Maya. I want to see you hold our child. I want to teach them to play guitar and watch you show them how to dance. I want all of it. the messy, beautiful, ordinary miracle of family life. When he put it like that, how could I say no? How could I let fear win again? It took almost a year, but on a snowy January morning, I woke Liam with the news: 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, a new life growing inside me. His joy was incandescent, lighting him from within. He placed his hand on my still flat stomach, whispering promises to our child, his voice thick with emotion. The pregnancy was textbook perfect. I bloomed with health, my body strong and capable. Liam came to every appointment, his face a study in wonder, as we heard the heartbeat, saw the first grainy ultrasound images, felt the first fluttering kicks. We decided not to find out the baby's sex, wanting to be surprised. We prepared the nursery in soft, neutral colors, Liam painting clouds on the ceiling while I assembled furniture and washed tiny clothes. Ethan teased us about being the most prepared parents-to-be he'd ever seen, but I caught him more than once looking at baby items online, already embracing his role as uncle. As my due date approached, a familiar anxiety began to creep in. What if something went wrong? What if the baby wasn't healthy? What if Liam's cancer came back just when our child needed him most? I tried to push these thoughts away, to focus on the joy of anticipation, but they lingered like shadows at the edges of my mind. Liam noticed. Of course, he always did. "Talk to me," he said one night, as we lay in bed, his hand resting on my rounded belly. "What's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" I sighed, turning to face him as best I could with my 8 months pregnant body. "I'm scared," I admitted, "not of labor or being a mom, though those things are terrifying too. I'm scared of how much I have to lose now. You, the baby. It's like my heart is walking around outside my body, completely vulnerable." Liam was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "I understand," he said finally. "I feel it too, this incredible joy mixed with terror. But Maya, that's parenthood, that's love. It's always a risk, always a leap of faith, and it's always worth it." He leaned down to kiss me, then pressed his lips to my belly. "We can't control everything," he murmured. "We can't count every breath or predict every outcome, but we can love each other fiercely, completely, with everything we have, and that's what we're going to do." Our daughter was born on a perfect September day, just as the leaves were beginning to turn. After 20 hours of labor, she arrived with a lusty cry that filled the delivery room. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of pink, squirming perfection. "She's beautiful," Liam whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held her for the first time. "She looks like you." I laughed through my own tears, exhausted, but exhilarated. "She's a wrinkled newborn," I said. "She looks like Winston Churchill, like all babies do." But as the days passed, our daughter's features began to emerge. Liam's green eyes, my dark hair, a perfect blend of both of us. We named her Lily, after Liam's grandmother, the one whose death had inspired his career in pulmonology. Parenthood was everything we had hoped for and more: exhausting, overwhelming, and filled with a joy so profound it defied description. Liam was an amazing father, patient and loving, singing Lily to sleep with his guitar, taking her for early morning walks when I needed rest. And yes, I counted her breaths too, in those first anxious weeks of new parenthood. But it was different now, not a desperate measure born of fear, but a ritual of gratitude, a way of marveling at the miracle of her existence. Life settled into a new normal. I returned to work part-time, finding a balance between career and motherhood. Liam continued at the hospital, his experience with cancer making him an even more compassionate physician. Lily grew and thrived, her personality emerging stubborn like me, creative like Liam, and with a laugh that could light up a room. The years passed in a blur of first steps and first words, of preschool art projects and family vacations. Liam remained in remission, the specter of cancer receding further with each passing year. We never took our time together for granted, never forgot the fragility of the happiness we had built, but we didn't let that awareness overshadow our joy, either. We lived fully, completely, in each moment we were given. On Lily's 5th birthday, we took her to the beach, the same beach where Liam and I had walked on our wedding night. She ran ahead of us, chasing seagulls and collecting shells, her laughter carried away by the ocean breeze. "She's perfect," I said, watching her. "Sometimes I can't believe she's ours." Liam's arm tightened around my waist. "Best thing we ever did," he agreed. "Well, second best. Marrying you was the first." I smiled, leaning into him. "Smooth talker," I teased. "Always." He laughed, the sound as warm and genuine as it had been the day we met. "Only with you," he said. "Only ever with you." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sand, Lily ran back to us, her small hands full of treasures, a perfect sand dollar, a piece of sea glass worn smooth by the waves, a feather left behind by a gull. "For you, Mommy," she said, presenting me with the sand dollar. "And for you, Daddy," she added, giving Liam the sea glass. "The feather is for me." "Thank you, sweet girl," Liam said, kneeling to hug her. "These are perfect birthday presents." "It's not my present," she corrected him, with the seriousness only a 5-year-old can muster. "It's yours, because you and Mommy gave me the best present ever." "What's that?" I asked, curious. Lily looked up at me, her green eyes so like her father's, wide and earnest. "You gave me you," she said simply. "The best Mommy and Daddy in the whole wide world." Tears pricked my eyes, and I saw Liam swallow hard. We gathered our daughter between us in a family hug, the 3 of us connected by love and blood and the miracle of chance that had brought us together. Later that night, after Lily was asleep in her bed, surrounded by new birthday toys, Liam and I sat on the porch of our home, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. "Do you ever think about how many things had to align for us to be here?" Liam asked, his voice contemplative. "How many choices, how many chances, how many breaths between us led to this moment?" I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. If I hadn't been working that night when Ethan came to the ER, if Liam hadn't been on duty, if I hadn't finally let down my walls, if he hadn't fought so hard against his cancer, 1,000 ifs, 1,000 breaths, 1,000 moments that had brought us here. "I used to think counting was about control," I said, twining my fingers with his, about holding on to something measurable when everything else felt chaotic. "But now I think it's about awareness, about noticing each breath, each moment, each small miracle that makes up a life." Liam smiled, bringing our joined hands to his lips. "I like that," he said. 1,000 breaths between us, and each one precious. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, crickets chirping, a distant car passing, the soft whir of the ceiling fan above us, just breathing together, present in the moment, grateful for each inhale, each exhale, each beat of our hearts. I don't know what the future holds for us. None of us do. Liam's cancer could return, or some other challenge could emerge to test our strength. Life offers no guarantees, no promises beyond the breath we're taking right now. But I've learned that the beauty of life isn't in its permanence, but in its fragility. It's in the 1,000 breaths between hello and goodbye, between fear and courage, between strangers and lovers. And if I've learned anything from counting breaths all these years, it's this: each one matters, each one is a gift, each one is an opportunity to love, to grow, to be fully alive in this imperfect, beautiful world. So I'll keep counting, not in fear anymore, but in gratitude for Liam, for Lily, for the 1,000 breaths between us and the 1,000 more to come. If Maya and Liam's journey through love, loss, and healing touched your heart, please take a breath and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that every moment is precious. Your support through likes and subscriptions helps us continue creating these emotional narratives that remind us all to count our blessings rather than our fears. Join our storytelling family as we explore the 1,000 breaths that connect us all.